So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Brad Johnson. I am an assistant professor in geography, and welcome to the Spring Colloquium series at the FSU Department of Geography. And today we have the privilege of having the esteemed Dr. Marguerite Madden with us. And to give you an idea of how today will go, Dr. Madden will provide us with her talk, and then following her talk, we will have a question and answer session. If you do have any questions throughout, feel free to go ahead and post them in the Q&A section. We try to leave the chat open for other purposes, but if you want to have a question that you'd like to have answered, please do so in Q&A. And as appropriate, Dr. Madden will try to address them as she goes along, but if not, that's okay. We'll go ahead and make sure we catch everyone's question toward the end to make sure we are maintaining our level of engagement. And now for introducing Dr. Marguerite Madden. She's a professor in the University of Georgia Department of Geography and director of the Center for Geospatial Research, or CGR. She holds Bachelor and Master of Arts degrees in biology from the State University of New York and a PhD in ecology from the University of Georgia. Since the late 1970s, she has conducted research combining geospatial data and analyses with landscape ecology, particularly focused on human-animal environment interactions. Joined in the UGA-CGR in 1985, she developed and analyzed numerous multi-temporal and detailed vegetation databases for local, state, and national conservation lands throughout the Southeastern United States. Professor Madden is an American Society of Photogrammetry and Remote Sensing past president in 2007, and editor of the 2009 ASPRS Manual of GIS. She served as the International Society of Photogrammetry and Remote Sensing Commission 4 Digital Mapping and Geodatabases Technical President from 2008 to 2012, the ISPRS Council Second Vice President from 2012 to 2016, and Treasurer of the ISPRS Foundation from 2010 to present. She is a fellow of the ASPRS and ISPRS, and a recipient of the NASA Silver Achievement Medal in 2018, an ASPRS Lifetime Achievement Award in 2020, an AAG Remote Sensing Specialty Group Outstanding Contributions to Remote Sensing Award in 2021. She currently serves on the Mapping Science Committee of the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine. And with that, on behalf of our department and Florida State in general, I want to welcome you, a warm welcome to Dr. Marguerite Madden.
Thank you. It's very nice to be here. Thank you for inviting me, Brad. I'll go ahead and share my screen. Move this over. So some of you might have remembered I got a chance to go to FSU, I think it was 16 years ago, as a speaker. I was invited by Dr. Yang, and one memorable part, besides meeting people and having a really nice time giving a talk, is I think there were tornadoes going through, and my flight back was canceled, and I had to rent a car. And I had to be back there to run the Atlanta Marathon. So that trip sticks out in my mind. But I'm very glad to be back here today. And also talking about a project that I'm really excited about. This is something we've been working on for about, maybe 4 or 5 years, actually developing the ideas. But it's interesting because we haven't landed a good grant to really support it yet, but it is a lot of people coming together, contributing their time. We have a conservation group called Connected Conservation, and they have donated some money to buy GPS collars for elephants, so we're able to collect data now, and we're analyzing it. So I'd like to talk about, focus on this one project today. So understanding bull-elephant movements, because bulls are the biggest problem in Africa, other places in the world too, but for human-elephant conflict. And thinking about drivers for those conflicts, linkages to the land use land cover, changes that are happening now, climate changes, and maybe some ways to mitigate the conflict. So I'll be talking about that as well. I'd like to acknowledge my co-authors, Melvin Cardozo, who lives in Zimbabwe, Bill Langbauer, who is a professor at Bridgewater State University in Massachusetts, Farrell Osborne, who goes by Loki, and he lives in South Africa and is the director of the Connected Conservation. Roger Perry is the person who darts our elephants for us to put on the collars, and he is one of the directors of the Victoria Falls Wildlife Trust in Zimbabwe, and Dr. Andrea Presotto, who is an assistant professor at Salisbury University in Maryland, and she was my PhD student. So it was really Andrea that brought us all together, and she had studied capuchin monkeys in Brazil and their movement and their spatial cognition and navigation, and she came to Georgia to get a second PhD looking at elephant movement, and then she kind of one by one got all of us together, and we would meet on Fridays and talk about research opportunities and ideas. But it was Connected Conservation, which we all belong to now, and you can check that out on the website. But they got some funding to get the collars for the elephants, so that's when we were really able to collect some data. We've gone to Zimbabwe. We were going every summer, so we went in 2017, 18, and 19, and we were not able to go last summer. We're not sure about this summer, but at this point we're all self-funded to travel there, but we're slowly getting there and trying to get students involved and get some funding for holding some workshops, and we hope that this will really expand. I want to also acknowledge my center, my research group at the Center for Geospatial Research, because you know, as a director, I'm not hands-on. I don't get to do a lot of the fun part of it, but we have some wonderful students and postdocs and affiliated faculty who work on all of these projects. So my objective for today, this study is aimed at understanding elephant movements and linkages to urban development, local communal farming, and climate changes, hopefully towards mitigating the human-elephant conflict, and mainly in the Kavango-Zambezi region of South Africa. We combine geospatial technologies of remote sensing, from drone imagery to satellite and photogrammetric analysis and geovisualization, and to analyze the spatial temporal patterns of animal movements, and thinking about the habitat condition, and hopefully we can have some outcomes that will help decision makers in Africa. And one thing I would just like to kind of put in the back of everybody's minds is we are always trying to perfect our automation and our processing and computer models, but I stress to my students the power of visualization. I think seeing is believing and understanding. So certainly I acknowledge the need for automated processes of geospatial imagery processing and making products that take advantage of very advanced analytics and analyses, from image acquisition, collecting the images and classifying them, extracting features, using advanced processes such as deep learning. All of that is to detect and understand the images, but we also need, I think, our eyes on the imagery. If we can identify the features that we're seeing in images before we process, we'll do a better job. And also, just this basic visual image understanding or interpretation, it's critical to any form of automation, modeling or assessment of the output quality. Many times I'll read papers that say, you know, after comparing methods and very rigorous analysis, you know, they test the accuracy of it by having graduate students look at high-resolution imagery in Google Earth, for example, which is fine, but I think people need to understand that that's a big part of the whole process. Is we bring our life experiences, our own perceptions, our values, what we ever read, places we've been to. We bring all of that individually to our computer screens, and we have amazing brains. So we can see patterns, we can understand what's going on in an image, and sometimes we can filter out something that is noise or background or inconsistencies, that we can accept that and know it based on our experience, but sometimes it's hard to program an algorithm to know that too. So I stress visual understanding of imagery in anything I do. So the motivation for this work is basically human wildlife conflict, and in Africa especially, but in many places and many different kinds of animals. But in Zimbabwe, they have had, there are climate drivers as well. So this year there were good rains. The year before, last year, the rains came late, but they did come. But the 3 years before that, they had tremendous drought. That drought affects people, and it also affects wildlife, and it drives wildlife out of the national parks, seeking water, seeking vegetation to eat. So you can see right there that sets up conflict. They have a regular wet and dry season, and the rains used to predictably come at the end of October, and now it seems like they come later. And if the rains come at all, the last few years they didn't even come. The rainy season seems to be getting a little shorter, so that shifting of the timing and the duration of the wet season and the dry season is having great impacts on on everything from agriculture to natural habitats for wildlife. So the severe drought that they had was killing elephants, and I think you might have heard about that, especially in Botswana. They lost actually over 300 elephants. Weren't quite sure what it was, and now they established that it really was drying up the water bodies, the water holes, and the growth of cyanobacteria, which is a neurotoxin. And so a lot of these elephants died of cyanobacteria related toxicity, and directly drought driven. So given that, we became very interested in this problem of human-elephant conflict, and this work builds on some prior work that we had, and we actually started looking at elephant movement analysis from GPS-collared elephants, but it was in Kruger National Park in South Africa, and this was in the mid-1990s. And at least for us, we were just starting to use GPS at that time. And Dr. Richard Fair-Hoskin was a large animal veterinarian here at UGA. He was investigating using birth control for elephants in Kruger National Park. It's a very large park, but they have a large population of elephants, and they were overpopulated. They're within a fenced area, and without hunting or culling, and actually in the 90s they did a lot of culling of elephant herds, they were experimenting with birth control as a way of controlling their populations. And the controversy was that thinking that this was going to interfere with the female elephant behavior and maternal instincts, I guess, and taking care of the babies. So he had elephant collars put on dyads of mother-baby pairs, and then gave us the movement data, and we were able to establish that the mother and the baby stayed together all the time. They never left each other. So that was some confirmation that was going to be okay. And then another was my work with Andrea Persodo. So I met her when we went down to Brazil to study capuchin monkeys, bearded capuchin monkeys in the Cerrado of the northeastern section of Brazil, and they use tools. So this is a capuchin monkey, a bearded capuchin, using a large river stone as a hammer, and either a flat log or a stone as the anvil. And if you can see my cursor, there's a little round brown nut. This is a palm nut, a ground nut, and it's too tough for them to break with their teeth, so they have to use a tool. So they walk off and find these rocks and bring them back, and they're sometimes a third of their weight. They're very heavy. They have to learn the behavior. They teach the behavior to the babies. And our work was looking at the geographic distribution of this behavior and the environmental factors that are needed to have all the right materials to do this. I met Andrea when we were down there doing field work, and she was very excited about geospatial techniques. So she came to Georgia and she got a second PhD looking at the elephant data that came from Kruger National Park. So, so that led to our thinking about elephants and elephant spatial cognition related to what she had learned from the monkeys. And then another graduate student, Wenjing Zhu, she's now getting her PhD at Berkeley. She did her master's thesis using that data also, and looked at integrating geospatial and ecological modeling and spaces, suitable habitat, and how long they stayed in certain places and what kind of movement did they use. So she was able to publish that work. And then combining that with our long trajectory of research with the National Park Service, and this was work that I had done coming out of actually my undergraduate work through my PhD and postdoc, was mapping vegetation, communities, and issues of exotic species distribution, human impacts on natural vegetation, and making very detailed vegetation databases when they didn't exist before. We worked in the Everglades between 95 and 99, and that was in response to the damage caused by Hurricane Andrew in 1992. And we mapped all of Everglades National Park and Big Cypress National Preserve, Biscayne National Park, and the Florida Panther Wildlife Refuge. That project led to working in Great Smoky Mountains National Park. And this is the entire park, but if you zoom into one of the tiles or the quads, you can see the level of detail that I like to work at. So it's manual interpretation, digitizing vegetation polygons on aerial photographs, doing a lot of field work, coming up with a very complex vegetation classification system, but having it be hierarchical, so classes could be collapsed for modeling and for change analysis, but then really drilling down to the community level and adding any special impacts that we could see on the aerial photographs, such as human influence or damage from exotic insects. So the habitat mapping side we brought to the group. And then the use of new technologies as they come forward. Dr. Sergio Bernardez, who's the Associate Director of CGR, and also Dr. Tommy Jordan, who was, he is retired but still working with us. He was the former Associate Director. Both have done a lot of work with drones, and very low cost. We use Phantoms. This one is equipped with a Mica Sense. We have now a Matrice 600, so we can put on some other sensors like a thermal imager and a LiDAR. But I think our basis in photogrammetry has really helped us. So we fly the drone imagery, we make 3D models, 3D point clouds, orthomosaics, and we've looked at vegetation damage after hurricanes and things like that. We've done 3D modeling of habitats, and this was actually a building on campus, Baldwin Hall, using structure from motion photogrammetry. And then those models can go into virtual reality and augmented reality goggles for what I would also say is the wow factor. You know, I think it's okay to explore the use of gaming technology and things that students like to use. I am old enough to remember the first time I saw color television, and it was a golf match, but we were just amazed that everything was green. So I felt that way again when I tried virtual reality and especially augmented reality goggles the first time. So we're incorporating them in our classwork and trying in our research. It's a great form of communication and getting students involved and engaged and as an active learning technique. So Dr. Bernardez has brought in a lot of middle school and you know, grades about 5 through 12 in to engage in this technology. We teach students how to fly drones if they're interested, prep them for taking the Part 401, Part 107 UAS certification. He uses it in outreach and also does some research on learning effectiveness before and after being exposed to the technology. So having those strengths of our lab combined with our team that has a lot of expertise in animal behavior, elephant populations, elephant communication, we are focused on an area which is the confluence of 5 different countries in southern Africa. And they all come together at a point where Victoria Falls, the wonder of the world, is there. And it's certainly a tourist attraction and also very important wildlife habitat. So the Kavango-Zambezi area, it's also called the Transfrontier Conservation Area. We call it the KAZA for short, is a collection of different preserved and conservation lands being coordinated to help to for conservation efforts for plants and animals, and especially elephants. This is the largest contiguous area of elephant habitat. They estimate about 75% of the world's elephants, African elephants, are in this area. The population is about, they estimate 250,000 right now. They are free roaming, so whereas in Kruger they're actually fenced in, these are animals are free roaming. So that is the premise and the reason why there is a conflict. They can go anywhere they want to, and they do go many places. So just to give some spatial context of where this is, these are where the countries come together. And if we zoom in on the area in the red boxes where we have collared our elephants and where we work the most, but the elephants they cross borders. We have some elephants that will typically go to Botswana and go to Zambia. We have other elephants that never leave the Victoria Falls area. So it's very interesting to look at individual differences, but we have collaborated with some researchers in the Okavango Delta area, and their elephants are kind of hemmed in by fences, and there's a lot of conflict over there also with farmers. And zoom in a little bit more to give a little more detail. So here's the river. This is the Zambezi River coming down, and there's this zigzag pattern of, I guess the geology itself. The rocks just sort of fall away, and I have created the falls, amazing falls, but that are constantly retreating. And on the west side is the, I guess I would say it's a town of Victoria Falls, not very big, and then Livingstone is across on the Zambia side. And the elephants will very often swim the river and cross over. They spend a lot of time in this island. But they also, they have a very wide distribution, very, their home ranges are very, very large. But they'll come down into the light tan area with these little, you can see hopefully you can see small little squares are all these individual farmers' agricultural fields. And then there's a straight feature right here, this brown, kind of tan, that's the airport, international airport now. And so the communal lands where people are trying to farm, there's the airport where they have had elephants on the runway, Victoria Falls with a lot of tourists, and these patches, these kind of green patches, lately have been purchased for public use as for hunting lodges. They're putting in fences along some of these lines. There's roads and railroads, but there's also fence lines going in. There's a fence, a curvy fence here. There's fences on the outside of this area that I'll be talking about a little bit more. And there's also people who live kind of on the west side of the airport. So there's agriculture there as well. So just to kind of give you the lay of the land there. So Victoria Falls, and you can, hopefully you can see there's a part of it that's very dark green compared to all the rest of the land, which is mostly woodland and brushland and grassland. But this area is irrigated, people's gardens, the houses are quite old. You know, in the 1800s, Queen Victoria would visit and take a train and stay in a big hotel there. You can imagine that, especially in the dry season, that's pretty tempting to an elephant because there's fruit growing there and all kinds of tempting vegetation. There's a little bit of a commercial area right here, just one main road, couple places with restaurants and shops for the tourists, some hotels. There's a big golf course here up here, and there's a lot of hotels that are right along and restaurants and things along the river. They have helicopter rides, they have zip lines, they have, you know, a lot of tourist activities. They used to have elephant riding, but they don't have that anymore. And then you can see some new development areas where there's new housing. Housing is at a premium. A lot of people want to go to conferences there, and so individual people will rent out rooms in their house. They're building lodges. They might build an extra building on their property to have people stay at. And there's a new network of roads being built on the west side. And this is all being developed as I speak today. So here's some examples of the conflict. On the lower left is elephants right at the crossing. There's a bridge that goes across the river. People going from Zambia and Zimbabwe back and forth. And here's a family group just walking through. They're very adapted to people. The females will definitely defend their babies, and we've had tourists attacked and killed. The bulls especially are very aggressive. This is a bull that has been killed because it was raiding a field, and the farmers who have the land, they could have their entire annual salary wiped out in one night by an elephant. So what they will do is they will try to keep them out. They'll bang pans, they'll burn brush, they'll have people up at night trying to guard their fields. But if there's a problem bull, they will contact the Park Service rangers, and they will come out and kill the problem animal. They will eat the animal, so this will provide food for the entire village. But there'll be another one just behind it. It really doesn't solve the problem. On the right, this is bull 2. So this is our second bull that we put a collar on. It's a big bull. He essentially lives in town. He'll go away far distances and come back to Victoria Falls. This was Malvern got this video from somebody who was just on the street, and this is where we would go to eat when we're there. Oops. Sorry. I thought that was gonna. There we go. So he was just walking, and actually he has another elephant with him who's rounding the corner ahead of him. You'll see him there. So very doesn't mind people at all. We've found him and parked and watched him for hours. So not all elephants are like that, but he's very accustomed to people. So our group is very interdisciplinary. We have representatives from the communal lands and from the Wildlife Trust and from the park. The parks, Zim Parks is what it's called, get together and we talk about the data that we're collecting and how we have to coordinate getting the collars on the bulls. We usually have a number of veterinarian interns that are there that come along. So there'll be a group of 5 to maybe 15 of us in a team. It's quite a production to get the collars on the bulls. To dart them, we have a professional hunter that comes with us. And there has been at least one time when the hunter had to shoot the bull who was not reacting to the dart at all and actually attacked Roger, who does the darting, and it ended up he had an abscess in his jaw, in his mouth, so he had been suffering for a long time, and you know had to put the bull down because he was attacking Roger. These are the bulls that we have put collars on since 2017, and I've been able to be a part of 2 of them. We went in 2017, but we weren't able to go out and dart the bulls the week we were there because Mugabe had come to Victoria Falls for a conference. So after we left in early September, they got 5 collars on. And then the next year, we went out a couple of times, but if the bull smells the people, they're very smart and they'll run away. So I was not able to. They ended up putting the collars on in April. And then in 2019, we went back, and the first day we got there, actually, we saw a lion, so we ended up putting the collar. We had an extra smaller collar and put that on the lion. And then I was able to witness bull 12 and 13 being collared while I was there. The grayed out names, unfortunately, these are the bulls we have lost. So bull 1 and bull 14, we found the collars. Bull 1, the collar had been cut off, and we think the bull was poached, but that we never found a body. Bull 14 found the collar, but it might have slipped off. I don't know how it would do this, but apparently it wasn't cut. It was just slipped off of the bull, or got it off somehow. So we may be able to use that collar for another elephant. Bull 4, unfortunately, we lost this past spring, and he died from cyanobacteria toxicity. And then bull 5 and 7, the collars just stopped working. So it's not fail-proof, and each collar costs about $4,000 to $5,000. That has a battery life. So some of the bulls, the battery has, and that was what might have happened with 5 and 7. Bull 2, his battery ran out, but he was such a bad actor, they darted him and they put another collar on him. So he's continuing to give us great data from 2017 to now. So the lion was exciting. I got to touch a lion. And we had to stay in the cars for this, and there was actually, this is a lioness, and the lion was nearby. We had 2 guards. We had an elephant come by at the same time. But after it was all finished, she will be given a reversal of the anesthetic, and she popped up afterwards. These are all veterinarians that are doing this whole operation, and I sent this picture by text to my brothers and sisters, and I said, we put a GPS collar on a lion today, don't tell Mom. So I don't think they ever revealed that. What's really fun is we can track the bulls in real time. We can also look at their history on our phones. So we have a mobile app called SkyQ Mobile. We can call up the ID for a particular bull, and then we can see on our phones the image in the background. We can see the position where they are, so we could go find them. And you can also put in a date range, and you can see where the bull has been. So I'm guessing this is bull 2, because this is what he tends to do. But he'll stay on the outskirts of town. He'll come in sometimes and go back out. And each of these points have a date stamp. There's actually a range of from 15 minutes to every hour, and some of them are we have had some of the collars programmed to be twice a day. So we have a range of temporal resolution in order to investigate what are we losing if we only have one point or 2 points a day, which is very often the case with elephant GPS collar data. We think we need more positions than that. So we like 1 hour, and we love 15 minutes, but it wears the batteries down faster because the communication of the location to the satellite and back is using some battery power. So that's the trade-off, and we're looking at differences in movement trajectories of the different temporal resolutions. But that's been really fun to track them on our cell phones. And one place that they go is to the garbage dump. So this is just south of Victoria Falls, and the black areas this is water in the water treatment plant, and if it's green, that means there's algae there. And in this circle is the garbage. It's just an open pit where the garbage from all the hotels and everything and the residents goes to. And the elephants will eat the garbage. So there are there's food residue, there's sweet things in there. They will ingest, unfortunately, the whole plastic bag full of garbage. They swallow batteries, wire, broken glass. They have very tough digestive systems, but even this is a little bit too much. So there's insecticides and pesticides and chemicals. So you can just imagine, not very good for the health of the elephants. So we actually use some image processing on. This would be a pile of excrement from an elephant. And you notice the different colors. So there's plastic mixed in here, different colors of plastic. The gray, kind of grayish brown, that would be the dung color. The reddish brown is the soil from a dung beetle. So the dung beetle has, in whatever they do, they ingest the dung and they mix it in with the soil. The soil is kind of red, and so this is the result of the dung beetles. And we decided, well, it's not a great image, but we could probably classify that and maybe try to quantify how much plastic that they are ingesting. So Sergio did this. He did some object-based image analysis, some segmentation, and then he merged the different classes based on their color, and then he was able to classify it based on the number of pixels in each class, and determined that, or the area of each segment, that the original dung mixed in with the dung beetle residue was a little over 60% and almost 40% plastic. So that just gives you an idea of, well, they bring the garbage all to one place and the elephants eat it, and then they distribute it back into the environment, besides all the issues of hurting an elephant as well. Another line of research that we're doing is looking at the acoustics, collecting acoustical data. And this is Bill Langbauer on the left and Malvern Cardozo. And I went with them one day to put the Swift units up. Bill had worked originally with Katie Payne and discovered the communication that elephants use at the infrasound, less than 20 hertz. And these vocalizations are too low for us to hear with our ears, our hearing. But if you can record them with something called a Swift unit, or Swift acoustical recording unit, he and Katie Payne from the Cornell Laboratory of Ornithology decided they could take that recording and speed it up so we could hear it. And the reason they thought something was being communicated is they would be observing elephants for some other project, and all of a sudden they wouldn't hear anything, but all of a sudden all the elephants would perk up and go somewhere altogether. And it was as if they were getting some signal from some place. So they did some experiments, and they discovered that yes, elephants are communicating by this very low rumble, which is a long frequency wavelength that can travel through the ground, and other elephants up to like 4 miles away can detect those vibrations. And there's a particular sequence or call, I guess, which is put out by females when they are in estrus, because it takes about 4 years to when they have a calf to when the calf no longer needs them, and then they come in heat, and they're only in heat for 4 days. So they have to get the message out over long distances to the bulls. So they did some experiments with recordings, and they attracted the bulls with a particular infrasound call. So they discovered it, which is pretty amazing. And I can just play this just for a quick example. This is going to go to a YouTube. This is the sounds like a lion. That rumble, that low rumble, those are the elephants. And the birds are in the background. So they actually have a lot of graduate students listening to these different recordings, isolating the sections that are elephant calls, and then trying to analyze the patterns of the call. So it's very intensive. This definitely needs some automation, acoustical automation. One problem is we'll put the units up, and the elephants they like to mess with things. So they'll knock the trees down, and we have to go back and recover the units. The one that we had put up in this tree and chained it with chains, I don't know how they got it off, but they pulled it off. They messed with the box, but it was still operational, so they couldn't get into it. But that's you have a plan in mind for field work, and sometimes it doesn't work with elephants because they're so big and strong and smart. So I've been using the data in my classes. I teach aerial photographs and image analysis. So last 3 years I've given them the data, or the option to use the data for their projects. And they get some experience classifying the land use, understanding the vegetation, bringing the data in its raw format, bringing it into ArcGIS, or sometimes they use Google Earth Pro, QGIS, doing some home range calculations, and looking at the percent of time spent in different land use classifications, and the differences between the dry season and the wet season. There's a lot of information online, and the KAZA website has a lot of good information, but they have to learn the signatures of the different classes and develop their interpretation keys, and then they quantify the amount of the percent of time they're spending in different land uses, and they saw some distinct differences between the wet and the dry season. So in the wet season, and it makes sense, there's vegetation is lush, there's vegetation in wide areas, so the distribution of the points, and these are color-coded by different elephants, tends to be more widely distributed, and they're making use of the space, and they quantified how much time they're spending in different communities. And then in the dry season, they tend to be a little more restricted. They tend to stay on paths more. They're directed towards water bodies, and that would make sense, or towards the river. And this one was particularly interesting because this is we used to call them Lokis because Loki Osborne, that's his name, and the callers came with his name, Loki 1, Loki 2, Loki 3. But he asked us to change the name to Bull. So this is Bull 4, and he got stuck behind a fence. So this fence got put up for a lodge, and for some reason he could not understand that he was able to get out on the other side, but he stayed there for a good 3 or 4 months, finally figured out how to get out, and then went off beyond that. But that was our first evidence that fencing is really becoming a greater and greater problem for elephants' use of space here. This is an animation one of the students created that has dry season are red and wet season are blue, And so we were visualizing, where are they going and how fast do they go different places, move off somewhere, and then they spend some time in one place. Just kind of seeing the differences and how wide a distribution this bull would go. This is a bull 1, and when the bull, the points that are in these lighter areas, he's raiding crops, because that's where the communal lands are, that's where the crops are being grown. They tend to even hang out just on the edges where they're kind of protected, and then at night they go in and do the raiding. Just looking at the visualization of their movements, getting some information about their behavior, the differences of the different bulls was really interesting. We know the sizes of the bulls. We have a general age range, and the bulls, so there's a family group of maybe 8 to 20 elephants, mostly females with calves, and the calves will stay until they're about teenagers, and then they get kicked out of the family group when they're about 16, and they are angry and they're lost and they don't know why they can't stay with their family anymore. But they tend to group together, so there would be small groups of maybe 3, 4, 5 bull elephants. And their main biological strategy is to eat as much as they can and get as big as they can, so that eventually they can go to the parks and challenge the big bulls that are breeding with the family groups. But until they are 30 years old or so, they're in their 20s, teenagers and 20s, and that is when they are the elephants that are causing a lot of the conflict and raiding crops and attacking people. And a number of attacks, they're not in self-defense, they're being aggressive. They also will not attack, but they will damage cars, they will knock over trees, and it's not to get the food, they just hammer on them with their heads until they knock them over, and then they walk away. So there's a lot of raging hormones, and they come into something called musk, and musk is like, a deer in rut, and so a lot of the aggressive behaviors during that time. We've had, we are a node for NASA Develop, which is an awesome program that I hope students and recent graduates can take advantage of sometime. We host projects that are 10-week internships, they're paid internships, and we have them in the fall, in the spring, and the summer. We've started in 2013, and we've had 3 terms of projects every year since then. And I thought this would be a great idea for a Develop project. So we had a team working on this, looking at human-elephant conflict and thinking about drought. So they developed a Google Earth Engine app that will pull the climate information, thinking about temperature and precipitation levels, and then also satellite data to classify the land use, and with the bull movement, doing hotspot analysis and conflict where the locations of the conflict, and also home ranges and the distribution of the bulls related to the land use. So we're finishing the second term is finishing in next week, in fact, and they're presenting at the ASPRS conference. This is also online. If you want to search on GIS Day from UGA from last year, we had the group give their presentation. It was recorded, and it's on a YouTube channel for UGA GIS Day if you want to find out more about that project. Andrea Persoto has developed an app, and she's done a lot of work on looking at the movement trajectories and identifying corridors. So she looks at repeated routes or repeated segments of routes that are within a certain, a sight range of the elephants. So she's identifying corridors, and this work came out of her work with capuchin monkeys, and we've had other researchers use, she calls it the HRAM, the Habitual Route Analysis Method, that is up on GitHub. Dr. Roberta Salmi has used it with her gorilla data, but had mainly been used with non-human primates before we started using this, and she became involved in the elephant data. So she has identified these corridors, and our goal is to be able to assist planners or someone, a developer comes in and wants to put in a new hotel along the river at a certain location. We can say, this is right in the path of the elephants. You are, unless you put up more fences, there's going to be conflict, because this is where the elephants go year after year after year. On the right, you can see the red lines are in the dry season and the blue lines are in the wet season, but this is Bull 2, and he will circle the town of Victoria Falls, and he will also, this is a golf course, and tends to go down to the river. The golf course has a fence, an electric, you have to have like an 8,000 volt electric fence to keep the elephants out, and it's also guarded. But you can see there's certain areas where they have access to the river, and they will go across and stay on the islands. This is a big island. It's also a prime location for a new restaurant or a hotel. So we're trying to provide them with this information so they can use it accordingly. This is a space-time aquarium looking at visualizing the data. Each elephant's a different color, and time is on the y-axis. So you can see Bull 4, he was hemmed in by that fence and just pacing back and forth. Other bulls like Bull 10 and Bull 9 have a huge wide pattern. They'll go off to Botswana and come back. So it's just kind of interesting to see also, when you look at the data in 2D, you can see them pass crossing, but you don't know if they're crossing in time. So this allows you to see the time dimension, and you can actually see where these elephants might be meeting up with each other. And that's, we're just curious about that. Or do these bulls know each other, that they exist? Are there some that are compatible? Or we actually collared Bull 2 and Bull 13 because they were hanging out together. We wanted to know more about their interactions. So I'll try to finish up with the mitigation, which Loki is originally from Louisiana, and his family had been involved in the Tabasco industry, and so he knows about growing chili peppers, and he has brought the plants there, and the farmers are given the plants to plant. Each family will have a row to tend. They get all the chili peppers that they can harvest out of their land. The fields are just, the fences they use for the fields are made of natural materials, so this shows you how easy it is for an elephant to just break through and go in and eat their crops. But they're planting the chili peppers in order to dry them and make a chili pepper mash, and also extract the oils. So they have the chili pepper oil, and as we all know, pepper spray burns, very effective for that. They experimented with they're thinking about like paintballs and how can we hit the elephants with this chili pepper. They ended up, a paintball ball doesn't break very well, so they ended up using ping pong balls. And if they squirt the oils into the ping pong balls, and then they make these kind of like a potato launcher device out of PCV pipe, and then they will have these at night, and when the bulls come in, the ping pongs will break if they hit the elephant, and the oils will be dispersed in the air, and the elephant sucks it into their very, very sensitive trunk. It's burning, they'll run away. It's been described as they're in agony for about 45 minutes, but it wears off, and they are alive. Otherwise, they would be killed at that point. What we don't know is how long do they stay away. Do they come back the next day? Do they go to the next field? Do they stay away for a month? Do they tell all their friends to stay away? So right now we have a small grant to look at their movement patterns before and after mitigation to see how effective it is. So this is Bull 2. He was in town in 2018. He was actually at an elementary school, the Baobab Primary School in Victoria Falls. It was time for the students to be let out, and the bull with some others were harassing the children, preventing the parents from picking up their children, and the bulls were trying to eat the fruit off of a tree in their yard. So they called they call Malvern, and they call the parks. People come, and they decided to dart him, put him down, and rub him with chili mash, which is a paste of the chili pepper. He got up from there, and that was on the 20th. He ran a little bit farther north, kind of stayed close by the next day, and then on the 22nd kind of meandered around town, left, and as of 2020, he had not been back to that school area, at least within 500 meters of the location of the application of the chili pepper mash. Since then, he has come back. He's been in the front yard, but he's never been in the backyard. And the backyard is where he was darted and put down and rubbed with chili wax. So we're hoping this is a little small case study that it is effective. But actually right now this is happening with Bull 15. We get reports on this daily. Bull 15, we just knew him as a problem bull who was hanging out in this green patch, which is a Stanley Livingston private game reserve. And they have put up the fence that trapped Bull 4. They've put a fence around the backside, and they are actually a rhino preserve. So they have 15 black rhinos, and they are endangered. They don't want elephants in there. It's for, preserving this rhino, and then in certain areas they do allow hunting. Hunting is allowed in Zimbabwe. They'll have very high-end hunters come, stay in their lodge, and the hunters have to, pay for their services and the guides and everything else. So they don't want the elephants breaking the fence and going in there. But Bull 15 got in because the electricity went off. The Zimbabwe is suffering from a lot of economic hardships. The water turns off, the electricity turns off, and when the power goes out, the electric fences are not working anymore. So 15 got in there, and actually 2 is in there also, so they're not happy. And then at night, they're coming out, Bull 15 in a way is coming out, drinking water here, and then raiding the crops in these fields. And this is called the Woodlands Communal Lands. So the farmers there are not happy. They want to shoot the bull. The bull has been hanging out at the airport. The airport people don't want that. The bull has broken through this fence and gone in where there are wild melons and other things that it wants to eat. So they were having a hard time darting him to get him to put a collar on and also treat him with the wax. So they did that on February 21st, I think. Put him down, and this is Malvern. He's got his gloves on, and he's rubbing the chili mash all along the trunk and in sensitive areas of the elephant. And he's not very old, but he's very, very big and very strong. So I took his points and just did a real quick day-night time difference. And so you can see just in Google Earth overlaying those points, he's in this Stanley Livingston Preserve area during the day, and at night he ventures out. There's actually a fence. He's broken the fence up here on the north a couple times, and he's broken it on the south. He drinks and then goes and raids the fields. So they were able to really track his movements. So on the 16th and the 17th, he would come out of the preserve, he'd go drink, he'd come through his break in the fence, and he would stay in the fields all night. So he was there till about midnight or longer, actually till daybreak, about 6:30, and then he would go back to the preserve area. They were able to dart him again, and no, sorry, they didn't dart him again. They added chili to they were burning chili bricks, so that gets the chili into the air that he could breathe in. They had chili rubbed on the fences, and once they did those mitigation measures, he still comes out of the preserve area. He goes to the fence, but he has not gone through and he has not gone into the field area. So we think it's working. So we're going to really try to document this. And it's not just elephants, though. Because of COVID, there aren't as many tourists around. They've had jaguars in town. They have had buffalo. They've had lions. So even the distribution of the wildlife before and after COVID, I think, is fascinating as well. Future work, one thing is about identifying which bull it is that's doing the rating. So we take pictures of the bottom of their feet, which is like a footprint, and then we're looking at imaging of the footprints that are made in the sand and thinking about the patterns of the cracks, if we can be able to identify if it's a particular bull, so they're not killing or bringing down the wrong bull. So just in finishing, I'd say this is one example of projects that you can take the data and the experience of the research, use it in the classroom. Students learn the concepts and theories, and they do exercises, but if they can be involved in the research as well, really to help to develop research questions and refine the processes, and then apply what they learn in the classroom, and then to really transfer that information over to the community, that can help to actually influence policy and assist resource managers who really, they need some guidance and they welcome, some information if we can give them some spatial information. Our climate continues to change, and this is not going to get any better. We have displaced people, it is displacing people and increasing conflict worldwide. So we need all of your research, continue to get more accurate, efficient, and operational extraction of information in 2 and 3 and 4D, and hopefully make that information accessible online, and so that everybody can use it. And then finally, just to trust your brain and your eyes to understand imagery, and also to interpret the success of your analyses. And please explore the advanced analytics. They're really exciting. So thank you for your attention. And I can provide, I know you have a recording of this, but I'd be happy to provide a copy of the presentation as well if you want to look at any of the references that we have too. So thank you. I think I went a little bit over. I'm sorry about that.
Thank you, Dr. Madden. That was wonderful. We appreciate that. And as per tradition, I would like to ask the graduate students first if they have any questions for Dr. Madden. And you can, if you'd like to raise your hand, we can unmute you, or if you'd like to drop it in the question and answer section, that would be fine as well. All right. While we're waiting on that, I can ask a question that's graduate student related potentially. And you mentioned the NASA Develop Hub that you all have at UGA. Could you talk more about that and what opportunities there might be for other students outside of University of Georgia to maybe participate in that in an internship capacity, and what level of students are you looking for?
Sure. I love this program, and I can talk about it all day. So if anybody's interested, contact me individually. Be happy to do that by email or Zoom. So it's meant to build capacity in the participants as well as the partners for a project that is applied. It's part of NASA, but it's part of the Applied Sciences Division. And they are 10 weeks long, and any student at the undergraduate or graduate level is welcome to apply. And also if you have already graduated, and that's what I really like about it, because it's a great internship to fill a gap between graduating and trying to find out what you are going to do next as you're waiting for graduate schools to give you an answer, or you're applying for jobs. You can be up to 2 years past your graduation. It's paid on an hourly basis, up to 29 hours a week, so it's not a full-time job. In non-COVID times, you would go to the node location. and live there and participate in person for 10 weeks. Now they're all virtual, so it really does open up the program to apply to any node. Some of them are at NASA Space Flight Centers like Goddard, or it could be JPL, or Ames, or Huntsville. But you have to be a U.S. citizen in order to go to those nodes. International students can go to regional nodes, and we're considered a regional node, and we're a university. So as long as you're already a student and you're on a visa, you're welcome to apply and can participate. Each project is a team effort of 4 people. And I would say it's really interesting because the team is multidisciplinary. You may have one person who knows about remote sensing, one might be stronger in GIS, another might be design. We have many students from the College of Environment Design because we have to communicate the results of the projects to the partners. And so science communication, science writing, graphic skills, all of that, making videos, making story maps, posters, PowerPoint presentations, all of that is valued and important. And sometimes we have people who are strong in coding, programming, statistics. So we have a multidisciplinary team. We have a science advisor or 2 or more assigned to that project. So I'm often a science advisor on the projects at the Georgia node. And then we have a fellow who is assigned to our node, and that's a full-time position. Sometimes people have gone through they've gone through the developed program as a participant, and then they might apply to be a fellow, which is a full-time job. And then they might go back to graduate school, or go on to graduate school. So the projects are meant to be pilot projects, 10 weeks long, very intense. They're very structured, very organized, and also an emphasis on professional development of the participants. So you get a lot of experience communicating with the partners who might be like a government agency, could be an NGO like the Nature Conservancy, could be a university, or we've done a lot of work with state agencies. But so you're communicating with them at a professional level, working out that you meet weekly with the partners. And the themes can be anything from eco-forecasting, disaster, air quality, agriculture, food security, urban development, water resources. So they're always changing, and you can look at all the projects and pick a node based on the project. You can look at where the nodes are and pick a node. The window for applying is only 3 weeks. So it's just been closed for the summer. We're doing interviews right now. But if you go to the website and just keep track of when that window opens, there will be new slots open for the fall. And you can be a student and you can take classes, and we can do flexible scheduling at the same time. So it's a great program.
Outstanding. Thanks for that. I have a couple of friends who went through that program, and they speak the world of it. So great. So I see that Dr. Elsner has a comment here. He said he enjoyed your talk. Thank you very much, and he wants you to speak to the concept of being trained traditionally outside of geography, and how several of our current faculty were trained outside of geography. Well, could you speak to the opportunities and challenges of being a professor in a geography department with that type of background?
That's a great question. Because especially when I came to Georgia, and I was working in geography, but I identified as a biologist and ecologist, I kind of felt like I didn't belong in either one, because the ecologists were working at different scales than I were. They were not using satellite data or aerial photographs. They were thinking about processes at point locations. There was some ecosystem level work, but landscape ecology was just kind of becoming a more popular or well-known at that time. So I didn't really fit into the ecology culture. And then when I was in geography, I didn't really fit into that either, because I had a different background. So I think now it's better. And actually in our department, we have at least, I think, 3 of us maybe that don't have geography PhDs. I think geography is broad enough to really encompass and welcome all of us. So, you know, it is, you know, there's a wide spectrum of geographers as well. So, you know, when you think of it as being a continuum, somewhere in there between the ecology and the geography, this overlap, I really have felt very comfortable teaching classes, especially techniques, really blending in my background in ecology and geography and biology. It helps me to understand what's happening with the process, the biological processes of the either animals or the plants, and also ecology brings in so much of the physical world as well, and just an understanding of the complexity of the interrelationships of everything, and then the geography tools and techniques and analyses, and being able to ask spatial questions. So. I would say I kind of grew into it, and I don't think it's a hindrance at all. And I highly recommend people to, and we have many students who do this. They may get a bachelor's degree in one domain, and then they may get a master's degree in geography or GIS, and you know, then decide at the PhD level kind of how to put those together. So.
Excellent. So Rika Marquez is one of our MSGIS students. She says that she really enjoyed your talk and is new to this field and is interested in mapping lemur populations and how economic and environmental factors might affect their habitat. And she wonders how you might go about actually developing or forming these interdisciplinary teams.
Oh, great question. So it, you might go to a conference, you might give a paper, and you might have somebody come up after and say, "Oh, I'm really interested in this." You can definitely find people to collaborate at professional conferences, but you could also read papers and just send an email to the authors and connect with them that way and do virtual Zooms. I would say that it's worked well with this research team. You may find somebody who is maybe a biologist and understands the behavior or the physiology of the lemurs themselves and their requirements and habitat requirements. You may have somebody else who, like yourself, who has the mapping and the geospatial skills to analyze data. You may have somebody else who's maybe a botanist who understands the communities and the vegetation, or a sociologist who is able to maybe do those qualitative interviews and surveys and bring in participation of the people who are involved. So those multidisciplinary teams are a great way to do it. And a lemur, like our work with the monkeys, is a little bit tricky because you can put a GPS collar on them. The group we work with did not want to. Philosophically and ethically, they thought it was wrong. So instead, we had to follow the monkeys. You have to wake up at 4 in the morning, be there when they wake up, follow them all day, take a point every 10 minutes and record their behavior of a focal individual, and then go home at night, download the data, eat something, sleep a little bit, and get up the next day. You can put so in small tamarins, which are a primate, very, very small, I went to the Atlanta Zoo and they had GPS collars on them. And I asked them, I said, is that an issue? You know, do they get hung up on them? And there was an antenna that rose up above their heads. And the zookeeper said, not really. They have learned to bend that antenna down and they use it to poke and get insects out of trees. So that was kind of an interesting, adaptation by the animal itself. There are RFID chips that can go subcutaneously under the skin. They don't emit a signal, but it's a way of tracking where if they come within a certain distance of you, you can detect that animal. So there are different ways of getting the locations of the animals, but lemurs would be harder for sure. And especially any kind of an arboreal species. It's a lot of dedication, a lot of hard field work to track their movements. But don't make that stop you. Still try to do it because it's important research that needs to be done.
Excellent, excellent. And Rika says thank you for that. So Dr. Marcus Williams, he heard you mention that this work is actually unfunded. And of course, first thing people think that this must be really expensive to support a team to get that far around the world and perform this kind of work. So what are some of the challenges of securing fundings and the decisions that went into moving forward with this research, considering that?
So we don't have the like a big grant funding, but we have support. So Connected Conservation and Loki and Malvern are two of the main players in that. They have provided our housing. So that if we can pay to get there, then they put us up. They'll rent a house for us. We cook all of our own meals. They have a vehicle that we can use. The Victoria Falls Wildlife Trust, they volunteer their time to do the darting. And we don't do it by helicopter. They have done that in the past, but we are on the ground with walkie-talkies and coordinating. So it's really just a lot of people who are invested in this and want to do the work. And I feel lucky and privileged to be able to go there and do this work. So, and I had been having a lot of international travel with the offices that I had been holding in ISPRS, and I had built up a lot of frequent flyer points. So I would buy Andrea's ticket with my frequent flyer points to get her over to Africa as well. So it's kind of just, you want to do something and you just make it happen. You just work really hard to make it happen. So, and we felt like if we started it and we got the data, and now we're getting our papers. We've got about 4 or 5 papers in the pipeline right now. That will strengthen our, the next NSF grant that I put in a couple for the coupled human nature systems, and we got some good reviews, but we felt like we needed some more demonstration of success before we went back out for another grant.
Great, that is great information. One thing I picked out from that for graduate students is ask your professors to give you their sky miles.
Yeah, they might not all be able to do it, but yeah, it's worth a try. It's worth a ask.
Maybe not. Great. Like Dr. Sandy Wong says she's interested in hearing more about the different mitigation strategies to avoid the conflict between human beings and elephants, and have the communities that you work with consider strategies that are more carrot than stick, such as planting dedicated fields for elephants.
Oh yes, yes. And in fact, that has been mentioned. That has worked with other wildlife. I think we may even have some evidence for that, because it seems like the fields that are being raided are on the periphery, and they do kind of stay in some cover and then come to those fields. So that is something that is done. So then you plant some extra area for them, and then you protect your fields that are closer to the houses and where people are living. It's just, they're so big and they do so much damage that I could almost see them then just keep coming forward. And they get habituated and used to people. The chili pepper seems to be, we hope, a good idea, because once they had a traumatic experience of either being darted and rubbed with the mash or shot with the ping pong balls, then after that, it seems, we're not completely sure it's effective, but anecdotally it is. Then you put a string around the field, and you coat that string with chili pepper. So then they come close to it and they smell it and then go away. So you're not having to stay up all night and shoot them again. But it is a reminder that the chili is there. And then the bricks that they make are concentrated chili infused clay, and then burning those, then that smoke is another thing that will diffuse out, and they'll smell it. They make things called virtual fences. So the virtual fences are, once you have identified the corridors that the elephants are using to get towards the fields, then you proactively put out chili, or these burning chili bricks, and so you deter them from all of their approaches to that area. So that's one thing. And then another is there has been a program of, and usually it's maybe a European country that would enact this, trying to help, of insurance, so that if you are a farmer and you lose your cow to a lion attack, you appeal to the insurance company and you get paid. But unfortunately, that is not rewarding, but it is compensation. But it's letting your cows roam free and be vulnerable to lion attacks, and then being compensated for it. Versus instead, an insurance company paying you to create, they call it a boma, which is a temporary fence that is portable, and they'll put it in the backyard of one of the landowners. Put all the people's cows will come together. As long as you have a visual barrier, it could be plastic or something lightweight. It doesn't have to be a fence that will keep a lion out. If a lion doesn't see the whole cow, does not get the instinct to attack. So if it only sees the feet, or the head, for some reason will not attack the cows. So as long as they're inside the boma, they're protected at night, and then that boma can move around as the grass is eaten. Traditionally, they would have kids stay up all night and try to frighten away any kind of animals that came, and then they were too tired to go to school the next day. They would also put bells on the cow, one cow, let the cows roam, and then they found the cows that were killed by the lions had bells on them. So the lions learned that, they heard the bell and they knew there's dinner, and they would go and kill it. So just, understanding kind of what's happening is helping with mitigation efforts, and trying to reward proactive deterrence to the conflict. I'm sure there's many, many more that we just need to learn more about, farming practices and crop rotation and the needs of the local people. It is very interesting to be there and walking around at night and realize, or one time I didn't get home in time, I was running, to realize that you are prey. You are the size that a carnivore would attack. And they live with that every day. And the children have to work, once they get beyond primary school, in order to go to high school, they have to walk 10 kilometers into Victoria Falls. And they are walking with elephants and buffalo and lions. And until you go to a place and that's just a very scratching the surface of trying to understand what it's like to live there. It's easy for me to be here in the United States and say, we should not be hunting these animals. But they can, one hunting permit can be $30,000 to $50,000, and it can help to conserve the land in the parks for the habitat for many other animals. So it's really made me think about things differently. I wandered all over. I'm sorry. I don't know if I even answered your question. But
No, thank you. I think that was helpful. Let's see. All right. Any follow-up questions from anyone or anything? I'm interested. I know that I don't know if you're interested if you mentioned it in your talk, but I know that your center is also involved in creating small sats.
yes. It's actually a separate laboratory now, the Small Satellite Research Lab, or SSRL. And if anybody's interested, just check out their website. It was a group of 5 undergraduates who wanted to build nanosatellites, CubeSats. And we at the same time had a group of faculty that were approached by NASA and wanted to know if we would be interested in having a Georgia CubeSat, because they wanted one from every state. So we got together, and it has expanded. Now there's like 30 to 50 students involved, some graduate students. We got 2 grants, one from NASA, one from the Air Force, to build 2 different CubeSats. One called MOCHI, which is a multispectral ocean color imager, is it launched. It went up to the space station. It got deployed in November, and it is now circling the Earth and communicating with people. We're having a little bit of trouble getting images out of it, but it will be in low Earth orbit until gravity pulls it in and burns it up. So there's no space junk, space garbage. The other, which is called Spock, and this is for imaging the Earth and making 3D elevation models, which are processed on board, which is pretty exciting. And that'll be launched hopefully next year. So we have 2 CubeSats that the students have built, and pretty proud of that effort.
Indeed, pretty cool stuff.
Yeah.
Like, who would have thought that you'd be launching satellites, right?
I know it. I know it.
Great, good. So I don't see any more questions in there, but I do like the dialogue that we've had to this point, and I want to take the opportunity again to thank you for your time, not only with us this afternoon, but also with our graduate students earlier today. We recognize all the challenges of getting together and all the ways you might be pulled, but we appreciate that you chose Florida State geography to spend this afternoon with, and we want to give you thanks
Oh,
for that.
thank you. Thanks. I really enjoyed it. I love meeting new people and being able to talk about elephants. So anytime, I'd love to come
Indeed.
back.
All right, with that, we're going to let everyone go. And we encourage you to stop by our next session as well. If you want to know any more information about our colloquium series, go to geography.fsu.edu. We're under events, and you can find out about anything that we have planned coming up. Thanks again. Have a great afternoon, everyone.
Okay. Bye-bye.